So Alabama plays the South Florida Bulls this weekend, and boy, they seem very, very confident.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson with the AHSA Radio Network. That's me. Jimmy Stein with Bama Online. That's him doing my Hall & Oates finger guns. This episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM, and I'll tell you about Ultimate GM here in just a bit. I want to thank our everydayers for joining us and you newbies. Love you all to the core. Jimmy, lots to talk about today. We're going to have some fun rehashing Bama versus Florida State 2023. I know it's 2024 and we should all move on, but I got to laugh just a little bit, and we're gonna. We're also going to talk about how Alabama is ranked number 1 in basketball by a major publication, but we're going to start with talking about some South Florida prep and some other just associated news with Alabama right now. First of all, I've noticed on Twitter, South Florida fans are very, very active. They seem very, very confident about this game. I in a way, I get it. They gave Alabama a good fight last year. I think that they are discounting the periphery stuff around that game last season, but that's okay. I'm glad they're coming in confident. I want them to. I don't want them to come in and be scared. I want to test. Let's give us something, Bulls. Look forward to it.
Yeah, there's been some confident talking, even from the coach, who this summer said, when asked about having to play Alabama and Tuscaloosa, his response is they have to play us. They have to play South Florida. I mean, so there is some confidence and some brashness. I get it based on how close the game was a year ago. But like Luke said, things have changed. The funny angle to me here is that it feels like a revenge game. It feels like Alabama's got something to prove when it comes to South Florida. Yet Alabama didn't lose that game. In fact, Alabama won by a couple of touchdowns. Another aspect that's forgotten about last year's game, or I thought was ignored even at the time of it, I brought it up then. Alabama's defense played really well against South Florida. I mean, holding South Florida to 3 points is a big deal. I think Alabama fans that just watch that and know nothing else about South Florida, man, they must be terrible on offense and pretty good on defense. Actually, it's the other way around. They're actually really good on offense. And Alabama's defense was so good. Dallas Turner, I thought, played one of the best games of his career that day. This is a good Alabama defense this year. They were pretty good Alabama defense last year, and they held South Florida to 3 points. So they don't have as much to prove, but the offense does. And the guy I'm looking at this week, you can say that just about every week when you're talking about the quarterback, but it's such a big week for Jalen Milro. He's a send-a-message guy. He's a guy that plays with a chip on his shoulder. This is his week to prove to everybody, hey, you know why that South Florida game was close last year? Because y'all didn't play me. I'll show you what would have happened had I been the starter last year in this game. And while that might not technically play out that way, or it may not technically be that way, I like how Jalen is self-motivated that way. Hey, whatever it takes to get him fired up is great. Because I think a fired-up Jalen Milroe is an even better Milroe. I think Milroe is going to go off on Saturday, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
I'm with you. I think he's going to have a big game. We'll certainly do predictions later on in the week, but I'm with you. I feel like he's going to have a big game. And, it's funny when the South Florida coach did say that essentially, hey, they have to play us. It reminded me, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Watchmen, but there's a character called Rorschach in there, and he had been sent to prison. He's sort of a anti-hero guy. He was sent to prison, and all these prisoners were threatening him and wanting to fight him, and he's like, y'all don't get it. I'm not locked in here with y'all. Y'all are locked in here with me. And that's what it sort of reminded me of. And but hey, I appreciate
Horshack was one of my favorite characters on Welcome Back, Kotter too.
Yeah, Horshack and Rorschach, two
cousins.
Different two different cousins. Last name Smiths. But anyway, I like the bravado. I like, come in here, give us a test, man. I mean, look, I think we need this. Alabama has feasted off of fear for quite some time, and I think we need to re-earn that. That's how you get better again, is like, hey, let's let's put the fear back in them naturally. Let's not put the fear in them because they expect to come into Bryant-Denny and lose anymore, because I think some of that mystique right now is gone with Saban gone. It doesn't mean it's not really there. It just means I think the thought that, hey, when we go to Tuscaloosa, we're already down 10 points before we kick off. I don't think people maybe believe that anymore just because Saban's gone. That may be a bad way to look at it, because Alabama's still incredibly talented. It's still one of the best teams in the country. But I'm glad they're coming in cocky. And here's the other thing that I thought was funny. You know, we may not beat South Florida last year if it weren't for Roydell Williams.
True.
And frankly, I think we've upgraded at running back. So I feel like things are even better on our side. Whereas you could say without Roydell Williams, we don't beat South Florida last year. And I say that's true, but I think our running backs are better now. And I think that we're seeing that play out somewhat with Roydell at Florida State.
The offense is just better.
Off to a great start. Granted, Florida State's not off to a good start. It's not on. I'm not blaming Roydell. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that he hasn't certainly taken off there, and part of that is because their offensive line is apparently terrible too, and their quarterback. But I
think Alabama's offense is just better than it was a year ago for a couple of reasons. And I know we've only had one game of evidence, and you can't assume too much just because you saw the offense beat up on Western Kentucky. But I do think Alabama's offense is better for several reasons. I'll start with the coaching. Nick Saban sort of let the OC sort of run the offense. Nick Saban didn't so much kind of run that. So you've replaced Tommy Rees with not just Nick Sheridan, but you replaced Tommy Rees with Kalen DeBoer and Kalen DeBoer's system and the DeBoer-Sheridan relationship. So I think the coaching's better, to be honest. DeBoer and Sheridan over Tommy Rees. I'm not referencing Nick Saban in any way there. Secondly, Jalen Milroe's better. Why is he better? Different system, better system for the quarterback, and he's 1 year older. Had the same staff returned, I'd have still been telling you that Milroe would be better. He's 1 year older, more experienced guy, more confident guy this year. So Milroe's better. The coaching's better, as Luke just pointed out. At running back, we're better. We're more talented with the ball in our hands. I mean, we had an 85-yard touchdown run, a 39-yard touchdown run. We didn't have these things a year ago. We didn't have those toys a year ago. Now, Justice and Jam still need to improve based on my watch of the tape. They still need to get a little better with the pass protection. A couple of, I don't know if I want to say catchable balls, but running routes, catching balls, picking up blitzes. They need to do all that little stuff that Roydell and Jace did so well a year ago, but they're more dynamic with the ball in their hands. We all know that. And at wide receiver, we didn't have Ryan Williams a year ago. This is a more dynamic, deeper set of receivers where you do have the playmaker like Ryan, but you've also got Jeremy and K-Law and Kobe, Eman, Cole Adams, who didn't catch a ball, but I think we all saw as a punt returner, man, Cole's going to be a pretty good wide receiver. You can tell that just watching the kid return punts, and I thought he did a really good job. And there's threats in the tight end room with C.J. Dupree and Josh Cuevas both catching the ball last week. The offensive line's better than it was a year ago. I'm just saying this is a much better offense. If South Florida thinks what they're going to see is a repeat of 2023 with Alabama's offense, they're in for a shock.
You know what? This just dawned on me too. All right. So first of all, we were at South Florida. We also won 17-3. People feel like we kicked a last second field goal. We did win 17-3.
Like 7-6 or 4-3. We won by two safeties. We had two safeties and won the game, pulled it out.
Think about this though. All right. So after one game, and granted it's a one game sample size, it is against Western Kentucky. I understand. But who would you say are Alabama's best players on this team? Keon Sabb, Jalen Milro, Justice Haynes, Ryan Williams, Quay Russaw. None of those guys played in the game last year.
That's a great point. Here's another guy that I've literally ranked as the number one player. People forget this. You know who also didn't play in the game last year? Tyler Booker. Booker was hurt out. And
very true.
What a blow to the offensive line. The offensive line is a team within a team. When you lose not only a starter and have to replace him, you're actually kind of losing, your best player. Take a chain, take the strongest link in the chain out, replace it with the weakest link. I mean, that's a mass. Anytime you lose, that's why Alabama, the first series was a bit of a struggle last week. I point to two things: Proctor being out, and now you're starting at left tackle, a guy who's only hadn't practiced at left tackle since day one of fall camp. And then not only that, on the second snap, the center and the guard both lose their helmet on the same play. They both have to come out. So now all of a sudden the offensive line, which you thought was going to be Proctor, Booker, Brailsford, is actually Pritchett, Olas, Gino Vandermark. And we gave up a sack. Shock. I mean, that's what I'm just talking about. Whenever it's not that those guys are bad players, they're good players. But the offensive line has to work together as a unit. When you're mismatching and Booker's out and new guys in, there's going to be problems every time. It doesn't matter that the individual replacing you is also a good player. That's the unit within the unit, and there needs to be some chemistry there within that group for it to really function.
One more point. Arguably the best player on defense last year, Caleb Downs, had arguably his worst game against South Florida, because that's the game he got trucked, if you remember, and he only had 4 tackles. So, there's, again.
He was a freshman. Yeah.
He was a freshman, but he was still awesome. And it's just.
Oh, yeah, he was awesome, yeah. But everyone's going to have freshman moments, and I think that game was Caleb's freshman moment.
Time to talk a little Ultimate GM for you guys. Hey, Locked On Bama fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game I think you're going to love. It's called Ultimate College Football HC. Go download it. It's free. It's fantastic. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. You can imagine actually being the head coach of Alabama or South Florida or whoever. And you can be a South Florida coach and be as cocky as you want to be. It's fine with me. From recruiting players and hiring coaching staffs to overseeing training camps and handling school scholarships, you can control every crucial detail of your program. That's a big deal. Look, Ultimate College Football HC is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. That's a lot of fun. You can do it like on a plane. That's amazing. Ultimate College Football HC is just awesome. And, of course, we have a special offer for our Locked On Bama fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk, as it'll get your team off to a great start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com, ultimate-cfb.com, or look it up in the App Store anywhere you get App Store stuff. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Want to remind everybody those college football previews are still out there, and they were run by Spencer McLaughlin, who does a fantastic job. Jimmy was on them. And so if you want to go ahead and cross-check what's happened so far against the predictions from a week ago, good time to be doing all that. Jimmy, really quickly, I think we're going to talk just a few odd and end things and then do the FSU stuff on the backside. But, hey, kudos to the Alabama basketball team. Lindy's has come out with their magazine, or I don't know if the magazine's officially out yet, but they do have Alabama as the #1 team in the country. And I mean, that's just amazing. I mean, what Nate Oats is doing, we need to be giving him more love here. Everybody needs to be giving him more love because he is fantastic. He has done a lot for this program, and he is embracing the football program as well. He's embracing the fact that, hey, yeah, this is a football school, but I'm turning it into a co-basketball school. And I think that's wonderful. And what a great job. And he had 3 big recruits on campus this weekend and apparently knocked it out of the park with all of them.
It's as good as it's ever been. I mean, that's just the only way to put it. I mean, Alabama basketball, I think, is underrated nationally in its history, but forget all that. I mean, this is the golden era of Alabama basketball. We're living in it, right? This is what we've been waiting on. It's what we've been hoping for. It's what would it be like if Alabama was North Carolina, Kentucky? We are right now. Right now, I'm not saying historically. I'm not saying 10 years from now. I don't know what's going to look like. But I just know right now, Alabama is as good as any basketball program in the whole country. And 2 years ago, #1 seed of the whole NCAA tournament. Last year in the Final Four. And this year, probably the best of the 3 teams in terms of the roster. So, yeah, exciting stuff. I've never gone into a season, Luke, where I'm like, hey, I'm going to be – I don't know if – to say the word, I'm going to be disappointed if they don't win the national championship is so unfair. And it's so kind of ridiculous, but it's also a little true because I think this team can do that. And man, man, I don't know that I've ever said that in the preseason about any Alabama basketball team ever, that, hey, this team can win the national championship. They can, and Lindy's ranking them number one is just evidence that I'm not just homering out here.
I almost muted. Caught it.
No, you caught it. You caught it. I don't even think there was a word there. That was like your best non-mute ever.
That was a good non-mute. One other thing I wanted to talk about was the freshmen that played in the game. And some you may not have noticed do anything, but they played. And I want to reiterate, with the new redshirt rule, you can play 4 games in the regular season. Then you get to play in every championship or bowl game that's available. So you could ultimately play in 9 games. But I found it interesting. You guys at BOL did a great job. I don't think Noah Carter, Quentin Reese played. I do know that Sterling Dixon played. He apparently played 1 snap on defense.
He played 1 snap, yeah.
Dre Kirkpatrick played 3 snaps. Okoronkwo played 5 snaps. Caden Jones, Jay Lindsey, William Sanders, Casey Poe, obviously Rico Scott. He was the target on that bad call of roughing the passer against Ty Simpson. Kevin Riley, who I thought looked really good. Joseph Ionata, I thought he did a great job. Daniel Hill, we saw him, and he scored, right? Didn't Daniel Hill score a touchdown?
I think Daniel Hill did score a touchdown. Sure did.
Caleb Odoms played a lot, had 2 big catches. Red Morgan. And, I've seen some hate on Red Morgan on some message boards about the way he played. I thought he played fine. I thought he did well.
I thought he played really well. And, again, this is a soapbox thing for me, but I don't want to say every time he played well for a freshman, but you have to take that into account when you watch these guys. You have to take into account their age and experience. This is a developmental sport, and they're at the developmental age, and they're all going to get better. But gosh, so many fans, they just see a guy one time and label them forever, and then it takes them a long time to ever change their opinion. I mean, these freshmen, they're definitely going to get better. But I thought Red played well. That tackle for loss he had was spectacular.
Well, and the other thing that's not fair is Ryan Williams looked so deadgum good that everybody's like, well, why aren't y'all doing what Ryan Williams does? Because nobody does what Ryan Williams does.
That's why I don't shoot the basketball like Steph Curry does. I don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, but look, Jimmy, we're going to have a little fun at Florida State and Danny Cannell's expense right after this. But right now, I got to tell you about 5-Hour Energy. I love 5-Hour Energy. And I'll tell you something. One of our friends texted me yesterday. He was like, listen to the podcast. Do you really take 5-Hour Energy that often? I was like, yeah. I'm not playing around. I'm not lying to y'all. I got it. Like, I got some in my office. I need some because I wake up early. I got too many kids, too much stuff to do. I'm always traveling, and I need a pick-me-up occasionally that's won't affect me. I mean, won't hurt me. And 5-Hour Energy is the best. Look, whether it's right after lunch and you want to take a nap, or you need to tackle a to-do list, or before a workout, or watching sports. Like I took one this weekend because I was watching the Bama game. I was like, I got to stay up. I do a podcast. With 0 sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and even more. So look, go to 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5, hourenergy.com. That's hour with the silent H, y'all. Yeah, on the site, you have the option to build your own 12 or 24 pack. You choose the flavors and it's delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5, hourenergy.com, and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB, you receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. So Florida State last year, had come apart about not getting in the playoffs when Alabama did. And part of me sympathizes in the sense that they did go undefeated in a Power 5 conference. But I think we're in a new age of, hey, we don't want to do this just like the NFL where somebody plays in a bunk division and then they get in over somebody who's clearly better. I don't want to do it that way. I don't think anybody really wants to do it that way. So I think that they didn't have much of a leg to stand on, also because they lost their quarterback, who was clearly the biggest cog in that wheel. But, Florida State, if you really wanted to make a case, that you should have been there versus Alabama, I think everybody could forgive the Georgia thrashing, and that's what it was, a complete thrashing. I mean, illegal thrashing. Everybody could forgive that based on the opt-outs and whatever. But then you go to Dublin, Ireland, and you just stink it up. And then you come home, you have tons of rest, you have all the motivation in the world to be better, and you get humiliated at home by Bill O'Brien, of all people. Now, no offense to Bill O'Brien. Yeah, a little offense, because he still makes me mad. But still, the Boston College doesn't have your talent. They had the better quarterback, clearly, DJ Uiagalelei. People forget he was in the same class as Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. And all they've done is win the NFL Rookie of the Year, Heisman trophies, play for national championships, play in playoff games, win conference championships. And DJU hadn't done any of that. I don't mean to hate on DJU. We lauded him with praise. So it's not fair that when he doesn't meet the expectations we set for him, that we're mad at him, when he didn't prove any of this, except one time against Notre Dame when he played for Clemson. But it is kind of funny that Florida State is having so much trouble right now. And, the Danny Cannell story about how Alabama really wanted Mike Norvell and Norvell stayed at Florida State. It looks kind of dumb now, doesn't it? It's not true. And it looks dumb that you would think it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no evidence that that's true at all. See, I don't forgive the Florida State thrashing at Georgia. As a matter of fact, that's what I want to talk about, because Florida State's not on a 2-game losing streak. They're on a 3-game losing streak. And it started with their loss to Georgia of 63-3. And what I'm upset about is that game should have been talked about incessantly. It should have been the talk post-college football playoff, that a team that was arguing that they should have been in the playoff lost their bowl game by 60 points. And I know I can hear y'all right now, but Jimmy, they had a lot of opt-outs. Jimmy, they had a lot of guys leave. Okay, first of all, what kind of culture do you have when a team in that scenario has opt-outs? What kind of culture do you have when a team in that scenario has starters who leave? They weren't changing coaches like Alabama did. They had opt-outs, even though they were arguing that they should have been in the playoff, even though they had the opportunity to play Georgia. And by the way, if you're going to play in the NFL, what better audition do you have to put on your tape than go play against Georgia? Probably the most talented team in the country. Florida State lost that game 63-3. And no one was asking this question, because I guess these people are scared to speculate, but I'll tell you why they didn't in a second. If Alabama lost all 22 starters that played in that Georgia game, the Alabama team that beat Georgia last year, then lost all 22 starters and played Georgia again, what would have happened? I don't know, except I do. I know two things. I don't know. I know two things. Alabama would not have won the game. Georgia would have been much better than Alabama and would have soundly beaten Alabama in that scenario. Number two, Alabama would not have lost 63-3. I don't care if it's the 22 bottom scholarship players on the roster. Alabama would not have lost by 60 points to Georgia. They would have lost, sure, but not by 60 points. It was indicative of a major problem that no one wanted to talk about. And why was no one talking about it? They just quickly moved the opt-out excuse and the transfer excuse, not asking why do they have opt-outs and transfers? No, they didn't want to talk about it because it's the same people that said Florida State belonged in the playoff and not Alabama. And they didn't want to acknowledge that Alabama played the national champion to one play and lost in overtime. And the team that they were trying to get in the playoff just lost by 10 touchdowns to Georgia. They didn't want to acknowledge it. That's why it wasn't talked about. The same people telling you Florida State deserved in the playoff were the same people that said, oh, that's nothing. That's no big deal. Who else lost 63-3? Who else lost like that? Everyone has opt-outs in the bowls. Everyone had transfers. Who else lost like that? And now we're looking at Florida State. Hey, I'm guilty of this. I thought Florida State would beat Georgia Tech. I thought Florida State would beat Boston College. I'm not saying any different. I'm just saying we should have paid more attention to what was going on instead of covering up our bad opinion at the end of last season. And now Georgia Tech and Boston College might make a little more sense to people.
Yeah, and what's even scarier for Florida State is here comes Memphis after the bye week. And, a lot of times you're like, okay, maybe they can get it together during the bye week. I don't think this is a bye week fix thing. I mean, I remember thinking in 2000 when Alabama had a bye week, oh, maybe we can get some things together. No, this 2000 was such a train wreck for us. And I think that's where it is for Florida State. And look, it also goes to show you it is another testament to Nick Saban and to the status of the Alabama program where – you have a season, maybe you're a little disappointed. There were times when Alabama was certainly a little disappointed after the end of a season, or, they lose a national championship on an illegal pick play, or they lose to Ohio State when they should have certainly won in 2014 or whatever. And the next year they come back and they typically won the national championship again. So, I mean, it's a testament to the work that goes into it and the little things, whereas we all thought Florida State is back. They're back. They're back to the end of the Bobby Bowden era stinky bodinky stuff. So, they're not back to the 90s Florida State, not at all. And I don't know. I think it should be a warning to everybody out there. Look, when you have one good year, you better mind your P's and Q's. Don't rest on your laurels. And I think Florida State rested on their laurels a little bit.
Yeah, they didn't do a great job in the portal. I mean, they did an okay job, but I think it's a culture thing. I think it's a culture thing. I don't say that all the time, but I think sometimes we overuse that word when most of the time it's just about the Jimmies and the Joes and the talent. But culture is a thing, and I think that loss to Georgia should have set off sirens for everyone. Like, that's not normal. That's not normal. Everyone else had opt-outs and transfers too. And first, let's address why there were so many. And secondly, who else lost by 10 touchdowns? And again, Alabama would not have done that. And again, I'm not the homer sitting here saying, oh, Alabama would have a competitive game no matter. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying Alabama, of course, would have lost in the same scenario. But if Alabama had the same scenario, they would have lost 63-3 because there ain't no culture problem under Nick Saban. There's obviously not one under Kalen DeBoer. Alabama would have been competitive. And by that, I mean, it would have been, Georgia would have won the game. But it wouldn't have been by 10 touchdowns. I mean, Georgia beat Florida State as bad or worse than Alabama just beat Western Kentucky. I mean, and again, Florida State had significant issues. Jordan Travis was probably like the most valuable player of all time. Florida State played very poorly once they lost Jordan Travis. And you could go back to then and maybe say, hey, maybe that's when the culture started coming apart. Maybe he was the kid holding it together. But as to Memphis coming up, two things. Florida State should probably beat Memphis because they have more good football players on their team than Memphis has on their team. But also, Memphis might be better than Georgia Tech and Boston College. That's just a good Memphis team that has a chance to be the group of 5 team at the end. And they're sort of playing for that, getting a shot at a Power 4 team in the next game. But Florida State's going to have to improve to win, to even beat Memphis. And, I think they will. I usually pick the team that's got the most good players, and Florida State does have more good players on their team than Memphis does, so they should win. But I don't know that they will.
We think they do.
I think they do.
I don't know that they do. So, but if you have all the good players in the world and they're mentally checked out, it doesn't matter.
Oh, there's going to be. If you think it's a mess out here of us talking about it, imagine what it's like over there. They're seriously questioning things, and soon to probably, the typical situation inside the locker room as they start turning on each other. That's typically what happens. Let's see if Norvell can hold it together.
All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.